we wait for those answers to come in, Eric, I've got a quick question for you. What's one thing you're most excited about this year for you and your teams?
Well, Marcus, before I kick it off, I do have to warn everybody. I'm coming off the red eye. I'm in the UK, 90 hours of sleep, and I think we're up to nine Diet Pepsis, maybe Diet Coke, whatever I'm drinking. So whatever I preface for the next hour is got an asterisk by it. But what am I excited about? This sounds funny. I'm excited about less uncertainty. And you're like, how is that possible? Well, I think last year we just had so much uncertainty in everything going on with Liberation Day. And I think the new norm is there's going to be uncertainty. We're going to have to live with it. And we're going to have to move forward. So that's what I'm excited about. How about you, Tim?
I'm excited, and we'll talk more about this, but that I get to greet some fellow humans here, that there are still people who are doing this job and want to get better at this job. And as it appears in the chat, that you all and we all still matter. And I think people are figuring that out. So I'm excited that we got a job to do, and we got to figure out how we can continue to add value in a way that AI can't. And that's exciting. I mean, we're all up for that challenge, right?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll here. And for those of you that are in the on-demand session recording, we had about 45% of you say that you're all in. 15% said we're slightly conservative. 5% are staying even, and about 30% of you are saving. So for the one person that added other into the chat, or other, go ahead and add what you said into the chat. All right, guys, take it away.
All right, awesome. Well, guys, here's the reality. The pressure is on, and I do feel like maybe last year was a little bit of a reprieve. We had Liberation Day, we had all this other stuff, but I think the answer now is that despite the recent uncertainty, we're being forced to move faster, not slower. And any reprieve you might have got last year, at least I'm seeing with the people I'm talking to, is it's kind of moving away. So expectations are going up, but the economic pressures on the budgets are still there. And oh, by the way, in the middle of all this, we have this AI thing that we have to adopt and we have to leverage and we have to use and we have to prove efficiencies with it, or we get left behind. So Tim, I know you work with a ton of clients and have been fortunate to attend a lot of SKOs this year. What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, when I looked at the chat results, like 45%, the big number was all in. And I'm like, yeah, those are the people fresh off a kickoff. They're all feeling motivated and inspired. And then for those who actually read the whole survey question and got to the D that says, we got to do more with less, I feel like that's like the moment that's hitting them now, sort of post kickoff high, is everybody put big numbers out there and made a lot of promises both on behalf of the company and then to the sales teams about how we're going to help you get there. And then everybody went back to work. And so I think you're right. I think there's an element of we cleared a lot of things out, both sort of AI hype and economic uncertainty. And now everybody's like, we just got to get the job done. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Is like, okay, now that we know that's the case, what do we still have to do? And hopefully we can give you guys some answers in terms of some of the things that we're seeing out there where people are putting their efforts to get the maximum return and be able to hit those targets with basically the same or fewer resources. So it is what it is, and so now we've normalized it, and let's figure out how to get it right.
Yeah, it's interesting. You think about last year, AI was going to replace us all. It's going to take over the world. And I think if you look at the Gartner study, 75% of buyers wanted a rep-free experience, and that was what was coming out. That was the pressure that was put on us in the beginning of 2025 and even late 2024. What were you hearing?
Well, yeah. I mean, this was the warning shot. If it was Forrester a couple of years ago that said we're going to lose this many salespeople, and it's Gartner saying buyers don't want to talk to salespeople, and I think a lot of this, like I said, a lot of dust had to settle. And I think our next slide is going to be interesting to folks because Gartner just came out and said, in a stunning reversal on a blog that I read, their latest survey said that 75% of B2B buyers prefer the human interaction over AI. And I like slapped my forehead and I was like, okay, what just happened? Now, just like many retractions, like the other number was like on the headlines for Gartner, rep-free experience. This felt like it was page 86 retraction. Like I saw it in a blog. Like they didn't even want people to find it. I don't know if anybody else has seen this, but it's out there. And it literally, I saw it 2 weeks ago and it was put out like in September. So I'm like, huh, funny. But again, stunning reversal. I think what they found is that ultimately what AI did for everybody is inundate them with a lot of information that made them less confident. And what they said specifically is in complex, high stakes transactions, and that's everything you and I and everybody on this call are involved in, at every critical decision point, they want a human. And so I think that's good news. And that's another reason for optimism moving into the year is that we still matter and the buyers know it and the buyers are saying it. So now from this point forward in this webcast and in everyone's mindset, it has to be every day. Like, then what are we going to do different that's going to earn this right and actually have the impact that the buyer's looking for? And I do think that changes from the things that we brought for value in the past. And we'll talk more about that. But I love it. It was a complete, as they said, stunning reversal. So here we go. Come on, humans. Let's get this done.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, people still want to buy from people. People still want to develop that trust to know I'm purchasing something from you and there's somebody that's going to be there to help me be successful in using it. So now that we've all agreed that we're back to the old normal, but we've got all this great tools to help us, now it's about a better sales experience. And that's super, super important because your expectations of your sellers is on the rise. The days of you being able to put somebody on the phone with somebody where the customers come to the first call with so much information already available to them that by the time your seller has a conversation with them, they have to nail it. Like there can't be any fudging it or faking it till you make it. You remember that saying? That doesn't exist anymore. So in order to get kind of the peak performance, you really need to figure out how to leverage these tools to help your team. Tim, I know that you go through this customer experience, this journey a lot, and maybe you could give the team how you go through this with your customers.
Yeah, one of the root sources of information or truth that we have is a couple of years ago we acquired a win-loss company and they do client experience and win-loss. So they look at new wins and losses, why you win, why you lose, and they look at client experience, why people renew and why they churn. And we've been starting to see interesting, I guess, clusters in that data. And what we see is that why you win and why you lose has more to do with the experience that they have with your team than it has to do with your products, your price, or even the politics. So in fact, when you lose, 53% of buyers said the losing vendor could have won if it wasn't for something they did or didn't do in the selling experience. And so I'm gonna couple that with what they're saying in the Gartner study to say, when you win, good job, that's on you. But when you lose, it's also on you most of the time. Sometimes your products can't make it, sometimes your prices aren't right. But the majority of the time, it's still the experience that you control. It's not something outside of your control. And so we have win-loss data and retention churn data that tells us that in both cases, it's the experience they have with your people and your teams that made the decision for them. So with that, we then start to look at, okay, what are those experiences? And how can we train them? How can we coach them? How can we enable them so that people are actually doing those things? So I like to say it's sort of like a modern competency framework, except it's not based on the opinions of your best sellers and sticky notes on a wall. It's reams and reams of data. In fact, we have 150,000 B2B decisions that we have feedback on. that are telling us these things. So we know now what experiences are predictive of wins and losses and what experiences are predictive of retention and churn. Now we have to equip and enable people to produce those experiences that and do them at the level that drives wins.
So, Tim, why don't you tell us what's working?
So, one of the interesting things that after I said all that, that it's almost like, is it Monopoly when you do not pass go, do not collect $200? Like you can't do anything until you go to jail. Well, in this case, what we're seeing over the last year, going into this year, is this sense that everybody lost their way. They lost their sense of a consistent, predictable pipeline and growth forecast close ability. And what's been working over the last year has been people reasserting or reestablishing a foundational process program that drives opportunities, manages opportunities in a common nomenclature across your steps, that does diligent qualification and make sure you've accomplished each of those things that prove this is a viable opportunity and helps you get to a closed win. And what we found in our research of the buying experiences that were most predictive of a win if you did it well and a loss if you did it poorly was your ability to align the customer's problem to your solution. In other words, great discovery. And so buyers notice if you are running, they don't know how to put their finger on and say, you run a good process. They know it from the experience. And so the way they trust salespeople is salespeople look like they've been there and done this before, not like they're winging it. And that improves the ability for a buyer to have confidence in making a decision and you helping facilitate that decision. So what's working is making sure there is a strong foundation of repeatable process that can be administered, coached, and managed, and the buyer just sort of feels that in the way you guide them through the process. So there's a lot of fancy things you can do, but if you don't do this thing right and do this thing first, really the rest of it falls apart. And it's just interesting to see how the very first thing you do, problem statement alignment and then solution alignment to that problem, is the highest rated, most predictive experience for wins and losses.
So it's kind of interesting. You're basically saying with all this amazing technology, at the end of the day, you still got to get back to the basics, but also leveraging those tools to make the basics more effective. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, and that's the best part. Like the tools can really help you here, but it's like, okay, so then when you're in front of a customer, what kind of experience does it create for them? And they can sense it, like I said. So this is great. AI can make us much more productive here, but we then have to create a differentiated experience when our lips are moving in front of the customer and they notice. So we got to get this right for sure.
All right. What's breaking?
So what's interesting is this has been an interesting new 2026 phenomena that I'm hearing from companies that we're with and we're working with and we're talking to. There are some things that are breaking or they need to get better at. And one of those things is scale and sustainability. And scale and sustainability, like this is the other foundation you got to get right. Is your year one onboarding program hitting the revenue targets and retention targets so that your investment pays off? And then potentially even more important, it's year two. This is what I've been hearing from so many companies is that they feel like they've dialed in their onboarding, but they need to figure out how to improve the revenue per head that they're getting in first 12 months and productivity. But year two is make or break. If somebody doesn't think they can make their number at your company or they're struggling, they start falling too far behind for their growth aspirations, their career aspirations, and year two retention levels, not necessarily, we have wanted turnover sometimes, but unwanted turnover is unacceptably high. And so companies are coming to us and they're saying, help me with my year two program. And they're like, oh, you got a year two program? And they're like, we do now. Because they see that that's where either they make it or break it. People make it through year one. It'd be great to uplift their revenue. But in year two, what are we doing to get them to quota and get them confident so we don't see unwanted churn? And what we're hearing is a lot more of an idea around not generalized training, but more precision, personalized training, helping somebody exactly where they need it as opposed to carpet bagging, bombing, whatever you want to say. I hate war analogies. But the idea that like everybody like peanut butter, we're just going to give everybody the same thing in year two. Why? Because you're in year two. No, if they're struggling, where are they struggling? So we're looking at advances in assessments. We're looking at advances in obviously signal processing from the deals they've run, the calls they've made, things like that, and getting much more personalized and prescriptive on the year two upskilling journey to help people precisely where they need it, not just because they're in the second year. And the expectation with all that is one, we've reduced plausible deniability because people are now working on the things that we've been able to isolate and identify. And two, we improve performance and retention because one begets the other, and we've been working on the things that that person actually needed. So I think that what we're hearing is what's broken is general one size fits all, especially year two activities, and that needs to be fixed. And that's what we're hearing the best companies do is get much better at smart training, smart coaching, smart enablement based on assessments and signals, and identifying what that person needs. So I think we're going to have another discussion 6 months from now to see if that's all working. But that's where I'm seeing a lot of people put their attention.
Yeah, at Allego, I'm kind of blessed that we have the ability to already have this technology in place. So, when I think about, what I'm focused on, it's a little more about the people. And it's funny you kind of mentioned one of my number one priorities this year is developing great people and developing great talent. And you can't do that without having tools to help them be successful. So I think that's great direction that we're heading with the training programs.
Before we move on here, I think Tim, you'd mentioned something in the prep sessions about I thought it was pretty interesting was race to a stalemate. How do these companies differentiate?
Yeah, it's funny. And it maybe probably goes is a good segue from the previous slide because the thing that we have noticed is that the one thing about doing foundational things right is a lot of people can get those things right. Like you can run a good process, you can instantiate a process, get managers coaching a process, you can get AI supporting the process, and you can get everybody following your chevrons across the process. But eventually that's going to get you to a stalemate. Like, okay, we're all running a similar prescriptive and consistent process. And then you get in front of the customer and the experience you create has to be the differentiation. And even because we found out that's what is the differentiation. It's not the products. Most often it's the experience. And so that's the other thing is when I think about year two, back to this slide, is like that emphasis needs to be, okay, year one, you should dial in the process. Year two, now you just got to be great in front of a customer. And what are you doing with your team to create a differentiated experience when people are in front of your customers with their lips moving? Because now we know that's a prioritized interaction from the buyer's perspective. Well, now they got to deliver. So it really, breaking through the stalemate that I think we're going to create with our process getting locked in, and we're going to be automating our medic papers. We're probably going to be auto-populating our green sheets and blue sheets. Like, okay, what does the seller then need to do, and what will the customer see and experience that's meaningful? And that's where we get this is that in year one you got to onboard and do everything right and get them going on the paper and hopefully bump their productivity. But in year two, the reality is they should be running a process. They just need to be great when they're in front of a customer. And I think that's going to be good for everybody. So thanks for bringing that up. But that's what I meant by the stalemate is the slide before is awesome and important, but it's going to hit a ceiling and you're still going to have to be the difference maker.
So Tim, something just popped into my head, and I should not be quoting Eminem, but it sounds like you just get one chance not to blow, and you got to take advantage of it and make it count when you do get the customer on the line.
Yeah, well, that's a truth, right? We have fewer opportunities. They're important, even more important because we have fewer ones, but we know the customer says these are really important. So yeah, you need to be great in those moments, and that's what we got to make sure is happening. And just process fidelity is really not enough. So yeah, that's I don't know any Eminem. I'm going to be totally transparent there, and I'm drawing a blank on any artist that might impress this audience from my repertoire. So
Tim, it's the 9 Diet Pepsis talking.
yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate one of us keeping us cool here. So, but it might even be an old reference now.
It is.
So what I would say here, Eric, is like this is I started to share this in the year two. This is what we're seeing is that somehow people are using the signal and various assessment technologies. So assessments to get a baseline, and then following the signals from the other in-flight deal dashboards we have to perform a gap analysis and then to create a personalized learning journey. I pretty much think that we will be working more with customized cohorts based on these first two things to get to personalized journeys than, hey, you're a rep and you have this tenure, or you have this position and you have this prescribed training path. And I think prescribed paths are going to be replaced by custom cohorts, and we're going to be using the data and the insights to get people better. I think I saw somebody ask a question in the chat about what I might be talking about there. The breakthrough with AI in on the front end is really twofold. One, the ability to create an AI-driven simulation environment that reveals gaps based on actually performing sales activities. Too many assessments today are self-assessment, self-reflection, and people tend to overestimate or underestimate what they're good at or not good at. And what we really need is more performative assessments that demonstrate skills in action so that we can then find the gaps and be more accurate and valid in knowing what we're going to train as a result. So AI and AI simulations are creating more performative type assessments, and our company's launched one of those. There's AI simulations all over, but getting a psychometrically validated and calibrated assessment that shows you which of these competencies and skills you have gaps in, and then being able to corroborate that with structured and unstructured data, such as call transcripts and emails and customer reactions to sort of corroborate that information. And then if you still have manager and seller reflections, you can triangulate it. But again, I think I always say, if you say you're good at math, that doesn't mean you're good at math. You actually have to do math. And I think the same is true for sales. And assessment and signal are getting to the point where we can now see demonstration or lack of specific skills in action.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I get why everybody's journey was the same before, right? Everyone through school, we all went through the same classes, the highest and lowest level. But with technology, with AI now, there's zero reason that you're not employing that. So there's really kind of that excuse is we don't have time, we don't have the tools. That's really going away. So now you can assess the skills, you can figure out the gap analysis, and AI can even help you build those personalized journeys automatically. Yeah, it doesn't have to be some enablement person doing this. And there's lots of tools out there that can help in this entire process here.
So this is modern training. This is 2026 training. Let's talk a little bit about Eric. This is like a wheelhouse for you guys. You're an enablement platform. What do you see going on with enablement?
You know what? One of the neat things is we call ourselves customer zero. So or the guinea pig for all the great ideas that our product team comes up with. And so we're really been at the cutting edge of a lot of these AI tools that you're hearing about, the role plays, the assessments, all that stuff, even building scoring files, all stuff that took days, weeks, hours, now being done in minutes. And so enablement and being enabled is completely changing. And whether you're using tools now or not, you definitely need to be assessing the different tools in the marketplace, because if you're not, you're going to get left behind. And whether you're using our tools or somebody else's, you need to use somebody's tools. And so that's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing, Tim?
Yeah, this is where my head hurts sometimes. So we have I'll give you an example from a client. I won't name them, but they have a global sales team, give or take 5,000 sellers. But it doesn't matter the number necessarily, because nobody has enough team members to provide the kind of 24/7, even let's just be, 24/5 sort of support that global teams need across all the things they need. And this company is building, I'll just say, for lack of a better description, avatars. And they're building them by product, by competitor. Those are just like the first two places. And so always on, always available coaching with smart avatars on product A, one on product B, one on product C, where you can go and not just look at and read, you can interact with to get smarter on a product, as if you could pose your next opportunity and present the situation you're going to be in. And it's like having an SME, an automated SME, and then pick a competitor that you're up against and work with that avatar in that way. And so what I see is that that the scale, this company was like, I could use 100 more enablement people and coaches to provide this. I'm going to get zero. So now I have to figure out how to provide that scale of support without extra headcount. And those of you who voted for D up front, that's all of us. And so I'll just give you that as an example. That what I'm seeing is the use of the technology to scale subject matter expertise, and create an on-demand sort of access, not only to flat files and traditional, right? Somebody, Lynn wrote, from battle cards to avatars, right? It's just not, here's your homework to read through all this. It's not even your homework to read through this, shove it in chat and get a summary. It's now actually your ability to engage with quote unquote experts. And again, the human going to the customer is still the human going to the customer, but having an AI buddy is not a bad thing. So that's what I think I'm seeing in terms of enablement, is to scale it, is to leverage the technology in that way.
It's funny how much AI coaching and role play is just changing things dynamically. I'll tell you a funny story. We first rolled out our first version of it, I guess, over a year ago at our kickoff. And our chief product officer got up and he did a live interaction with his role play. And the role play looked at him and said, Andre, you look really nice today. And he laughed, and we didn't really understand it. So after he finished the role play, he said, hey, I've been practicing with that role play, but I've been doing it in my home and, in my robe and stuff. And the role play actually realized that he was dressed in a suit and actually interacted with him. It's amazing and sometimes scary.
Yeah, I was going to say, definitely how you're practicing and how you show up for practice matters. But I didn't realize the attire was included in that. Yeah, I have a great role play example. So we work with a company, and I did a podcast on this, so I can say their name. So the company's United Rentals. They're the world's largest renter of any sort of construction equipment, thousands of sellers, and they were rolling out sort of a new message to speak to their customers about change. So they rolled out a message and some skills. So think of it as an enablement program for a very specific solution set. And they rolled that out, and then they rolled out a dedicated AI role play for that. And In this group, there were 2,000 sellers. And my favorite part of this is they wanted a control group, but they didn't have to set up a control group. They just let human nature take its course. 400 of these 2,000 simply didn't do the role play. And so they got their control group. 1,600 did the role play X number of times each, and 400 just opted out. And so they were able to compare people who did the role play, how often they did the role play, and then see how well they performed over the next 6 months in that solution category, knowing that they had launched the message, they'd launched the skill, and they'd done the role play. And that was really the only major thing that changed. And so they looked at role players and non-role players, and depending on team and geography, the scope of revenue difference was anywhere between 7 and 30% higher for those who role played up to 5 times or more versus those who didn't role play. And that was the only difference because they got the same content, they got the same training. Some role played, some didn't. And so the idea of having observable practice and some level of certifiable demonstrated proficiency through AI role play, I think is the money shot right now. If you're not doing that, then I already think you're behind. So they found that 5 was a magic number for practice and where the breakthroughs were. So and this was interesting because they just presented all this data to the University of Houston's Sales Institute, Johannes Habel, Dr. Johannes Habel. So he did this objectively looking at the data and found this. It wasn't even like have slapdash sort of client company work. It was an actual academically rigorous reviewed content, and they found this data. So I would say if there's no AI role play in your repertoire right now, you're missing probably the most productive AI use in sales right now.
And it's funny, Tim, because everyone struggles with, well, how do I fund this? How do I support it? What's the ROI? That was a very, very clear use case that you just mentioned with United Rails, that they could very, very clearly show the value, and I'm sure the cost was significantly less than the value it brought to them, which I know we'll probably talk about a little later about little ROI, but I think that's always the challenge. And well, as we talked about earlier, economic pressures don't that's still on us, right? We got to do more with less, and this is a perfect example of a tool that can help.
Yeah, draw a very straight line between intermediate, intervention and remediation A, result B, and it's a pretty straight line. And this is one example of something that's pretty cut and dried.
So I think we probably rolled. I don't know if you have anything from a coach perspective. I feel like we've kind of been talking about that to date. I don't know if you have anything else to add on this slide.
Yeah, I think, the only thing that we are absolutely seeing here, it's just really interesting is when you think about old-timey reinforcement, like, hey, we did this training and we rolled out this enablement. How are we instantiating and making sure that somebody's using it? And not only using it, how are we fixing it if they're not, or how are we making it better if they're using it poorly? Here, what we're seeing, we have a client that has created an initiative that they call Smart Coach, and it is doing 3 things. One, it's automating the KPIs for their managers. Instead of making the managers go on some sort of archaeological dig, they're presenting the KPIs by rep on their team for activity levels and you name the KPI that's important. And they're just giving report cards, and then based on performance relative to rest of team and rest of company, getting a dashboard that shows which reps are in need and where the need is relative to the KPI. But they're also very actively leveraging call recordings and emails and tracking performance against those signals, and assessing and judging performance, and then giving coaching nudges and remediation in response to that. So this blanket idea of a smart coach means the manager's getting better and smarter with intel that's automated and faster and directive, but also the rep is getting very specific coaching based on what they did or didn't do in those actual activities that are part of the deal. So I think that, again, precision, personalization, rep specific sorts of things are absolutely the opportunity in this coming year.
Well, it's interesting as we kind of bring our summary slide up, right? So we've kind of taken the journey from trained, enabled coach to that kind of peak performance. The one thing that's not lost on me in all this is we didn't directly name any types of tools out there, but we probably just routed off 8 to 9 different unique types of enablement tools that are software that are out there. So one of the things that we're seeing and we're hearing from people in the market is that there's really like this tool fatigue. My reps have too many panes of glass to access all of this information. And so I think, I think it's something that people, I think there will be, like, there's a lot of point solutions out there, and over time, there'll continue to be more consolidation, and people are going to be looking for whoever their revenue enablement tool is to be able to do all of these things to provide that better user customer experience, which ultimately is that seller that you're trying to take up this peak performance journey. Anything to close with on this slide, Tim?
No, I think, yeah, it's really a good summary slide because we kind of talked about each of these, I'll just call them "you are here" moments to peak performance, how training's becoming much more personalized, and how the enablement's becoming much more targeted and in particular, practiced and proficiency driven. And then how the coaching is also being signaled in a way that it's much more precise. So I feel like there's an overall personalization, precision sort of vibe running through this line up to peak performance. And I think it goes back to the very beginning where at some point there's make or break moments for your sellers. Oftentimes it's year 2, maybe year 3, and hopefully then the flywheel is running. And do you have a dedicated, personalized, precise way of touching them with training, enablement, and coaching to get them to performance and keep them so that your investment pays off and you can prove to yourself and any of your investors that you can scale your organization, that this doesn't require super heroics, that you actually can put people into the system and they come out on top.
Yeah, and if you kind of summarize that with, like, what are the tools in our toolkit? What can we do? What I think you're looking at is, right, first is the quality, and really that's your people, right? Investing in them, making sure they're prepared to have those sales conversations. Are they following a process that actually reflects how the buyers want to buy today? And we've talked how that just in the last year and a half has kind of been quite a little bit of a roller coaster there. But the bottom line is people still buy from people. Then you're looking at kind of the quantity, which is the technology. I used this quote before. I said, and I'm quoting now Uncle Ben, which hopefully you do remember Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And with all these tools, we could build a training SCORM file in like minutes. And like you think about it, we could just inundate everybody with all this information and overwhelm them. So you still got to find that balance to making sure it's the right training at the right time at the right pace. And so that's your quantity. And then of course, efficiencies, right? At the end of the day, are the reps improving? Are they getting meaningful coaching? And is the AI reducing the friction, or is it just adding noise? And I think that's all things that everybody on this call needs to think about and is struggling with and hopefully working on.
I support all 3 of those, and I think in many ways we gave relevant examples of each of them as we went through today. So I think that's a tight summary.
All right. So next slide is interesting. We hit on this a little bit. And I don't know. We're scrolling up now. I like that. There we go. It was a little slow on my screen. Maybe it's the UK, or maybe it's the lack of sleep. I'm not sure if it was just me. But the real ROI of AI. So at the end of the day, AI is going to be a great tool. It's going to make reps better. It's going to prepare them better. It's going to make more effective coaching. We're going to get more adoption. But what it doesn't replace is the human experience, the customer experience, the judgment, all that stuff. It's never going to replace that. And I think we've kind of swung the pendulum one way, and now I wouldn't say we're swinging it back. We're now realizing AI is our friend, and it's here to help. But it's still, at the end of the day, people buy from people. And maybe 5, 10 years from now, machines are going to buy from machines and we're all going to be sitting on the beach. But for the near future, in the short term, for sure, people buy from people, and AI is here to help us make that experience better.
Yeah, hopefully we gave some specific examples in each of those areas today where people are applying um, technology, applying AI specifically, leveraging analytics and signals to make all of these things happen. But net, like I said, from the Gartner insight to what our win-loss and retention churn data is saying, it's primarily driven by the experience they have with your people in their roles. And so we have a lot of evidence from the buyers themselves that are saying this. So I'm all in on what AI doesn't replace. And I'm also obviously all in on how to get them to be better at those things. So if anybody is in sales who isn't working on the things that we've identified relative to creating a better experience for the buyer, as opposed to how well do I know my products and how well do I know my industry? How well do I know my company so I can get a deal through the over the line? Those things aren't going to matter. They do not matter to the buyer. It's
Yep.
how you can translate those things into meaningful value and outcomes for them. And so let's make sure that's what we're doing. I know we all say that, and I know I just said something obvious, but go look at the proportion of your training that teaches them your products and makes them certify in your products, as opposed to how they can tell a business value story and an outcomes based story and hold the line on negotiations. Just look at the percentage of time you put them in where, and then think about what the customer actually values, and you might flip that.
Yeah. So if we look ahead, right, everybody needs to invest aggressively, but we say intentionally, right? So just buying a whole bunch of tools and hoping, oh, if I buy the tools, if you build it, they will come. It doesn't work that way, right? You really got to be intentional about how you're leveraging these tools and knowing that it's really about elevating people and not sidelining them. And so I think that's probably the biggest theme, is that AI is going to really help us empower our people to win at a higher rate and take advantage of the opportunities in front of them. So Tim, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that yourself.
No, I think I'd probably be redundant with everything else I said. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I here.
All right. All
All
right, Marcus,
right.
I think
So,
we're back to you.
yeah, sorry. Coming off of video here. So I'm going to go ahead and add in, let's get some questions into the chat. We'll take some time here. If you have um, a phone and want to pull out your phone and take a picture of that QR code, you can. It'll take you right to a resource room. I'm going to add it to the chat as well. That's going to have the recording and the slides. I'm also going to add both speakers' LinkedIn to the chat, so connect with them if you want on LinkedIn, and you can DM, ask questions, or just connect. With that, I am looking here to see if it looks like we've answered a lot of the questions. Susan had a question earlier about best practices or skill assessments.